What is the most disturbing fact you know of? 30% of people reported missing and found dead were killed by the person reporting them missing. Half of the homeless people in America were in the foster care system at some point in their lives. I saw this old video comparing 1-year-olds and how they reacted to their environment, specifically toys laid out in front of them. The kids that had been in happy and stable homes were curious about the toys and would play with them, put them in their mouths, general baby stuff. But the ones that were in unstable, unhappy homes were scared to even touch the toys and kept looking around with worried facial expressions. It was heartbreaking to see the difference, and it really shows that the home you grow up in has a huge impact on your life. Only 20% of the males born in the Soviet Union in 1923 survived World War II. During the late Roman Republic, one of the richest men in Rome, Marcus Licinius Crassus, used to own a team of firefighters. There was no dedicated firefighter service at the time. If your building was burning, he would offer to buy the building. If you agreed, he put out the fire. If not, his team of firefighters just left and let the building burn. If you get the wrong blood type for a transfusion, one of the symptoms is a sense of impending doom. Not necessarily the worst fact, but there is still one body never found after Chernobyl. Valery Kademchuk is considered to be the first person to perish in the disaster, as he was closest to the explosion when it occurred. His body is presumed to be under the circulation pumps, but could also have very well been vaporized in the explosion. I was on a mock jury for an upcoming trial. The case was a man's family versus a power company. I learned that if equipment fails and you are boiled alive, a person can live in absolute agony torture for 8 months before dying of infection. You could be one brain injury away into being a completely different person, possibly miserable. Can't confirm if this is true, but I once heard that during the Black Plague some of the more heavily infected had pockets of infection that could be heard gurgling with microorganisms. When you're burning to death, your eyes melt out of your head before you die, so you're still alive while your eyes are melting. During the Arctic, Antarctic exploration, one of the researchers complained about his shoes being soaking wet. When he took them off, he found out the liquid in his shoes was his decaying feet that liquidized and made a forbidden Slurpee out of his feet and blood. A trinary orbiting black hole system could eject a losing black hole into the universe close to the speed of light, mopping up everything in its path. It's almost impossible to detect due to its speed. Mummies weren't that rare until the Victorian British ate so many of them. The Japanese military used to play catch with babies in the Second World War, with bayonets. Cloudy oysters mean they're full of reproductive fluids. Read a story in an old newspaper once about this girl, 12, who was asking for money to do a surgery. She was the only survivor of a shipwreck and lost a good chunk of her leg in it. That is why she needed the surgery, to be able to keep her leg from being amputated. The crazy thing is the motive for her leg to be amputated. During the rescue, she shouted for the rescuers to be careful pulling her up from the water, because a fish had bitten her on the leg. It wasn't a fish, it was another little girl, 6 years old, dead, still attached to her leg by the nails. Cruise liners all have a morgue for all the passengers that die each trip. Also, squirrels are not herbivores. They have, in fact, been known to attack and devour those adorable little chipmunks when particularly hungry. Read that, and I haven't been able to look at squirrels the same way since. Romans around 100 BC who had been found guilty of patricide were sewn into leather bags with one live dog, snake, monkey and chicken each, then thrown into the ocean. This was known as poniculity, which is Latin for penalty of the sack. Dogs can develop PTSD from having to eat the flesh of their deceased owner for survival. There is a whale called 52 Blue that only sings at a frequency of 52 Hz, meaning it can't communicate with other whales. It is nicknamed the loneliest whale on the planet. There was a time when babies were operated on without anesthetics. It was believed that their nervous system wasn't developed enough to feel pain. Ed Kemper cut women's heads off and then face fricked them. But what's even more disturbing is that he did that to his mum too. That's extremely fricked up. In 1518, Tenochtitlan, imperial capital of the Aztecs, was one of the largest and most complex sites on Earth, having a population estimated at around 250,000. By 1522, 99% of the residents were dead, either by smallpox, circa 70%, or the ensuing genocide that happened when the Spanish let the oppressed locals ransack the city. The city would be largely erased from history. Tenochtitlan would be considered clean, by our standards. This was at a time when the Thames River was choking with rotten animals and poo. Tenochtitlan was built on a lake out of reclaimed islands, meaning it was full of little canals. Through clever engineering including a Roman-sized aqueduct and enormous dam, the Aztecs were able to flush the canal system on essentially a daily basis. Bacteria antibiotic resistance is on a whole other level. Even in the 13 years I've been in a medical microbiology lab, antibiotic resistance has really become rampant. It's not going to stop either. The bacteria multiply and evolve so quickly that even the most effective bomb bacillins will become obsolete. We are going to reach a breaking point where even things like a simple cut or a sinus infection could become life-threatening. Don't take antibiotics like a Z-Pack for a cold. It's most likely viral and the antibiotics are just superfluous. If you are prescribed antibiotics, finish them. Older male otters sexually abuse baby otters and even kill them. Otters are not as cute as you think. Ghislaine Maxwell was found guilty of selling underage children to be raped, but they won't release the list of clients guilty of paying for it. If you put yogurt in a dead person's anus, they decompose faster. I've been deeply involved in AA for over 47 years. One of the many things I've learned is all professions include people who are drinking or drunk while working. This includes airline pilots. I'm betting as I write this there's a legally drunk pilot in the air right now. The effects that trauma have on development are chilling. Trauma completely rewires the brain and makes everything from forming attachment to problem solving more difficult. Intervention and treatment can bring about great healing, although it is often a difficult and long road. What a horse foot look like without the hoof, I regret learning. Might not be that disturbing, but blind people don't see black. They just don't see. If they were born blind, they don't know what black is, so they just do not see anything at all. Prions, a deadly protein that can be formed randomly in humans or from ingesting or coming into contact with something infected with prions. Everything the prion touches just creates more prions. There's no cure. It's 100% fatal. Freaking terrifying. Missed a lot of info. I'm sure people will add to this smiley face. Someone had to say it. For my fellow habitual neck crackers, studies show there is a 1 in 20,000 to 1 in 250,000 chance that popping your neck can cause a small tear dissection in the inner lining of an artery, which can lead to blood clots forming that can create a block again in an artery downstream, causing an ischemic stroke, a condition where the blood supply to part of the brain is cut off. Junko Furuta was brutally tortured for 44 days before succumbing to her injuries, and a few of the perpetrators walk free today. You could have an aneurysm in your brain right now waiting to explode and you'd never know. When the guillotine was initially introduced, people fought to be executed first cause the blade would become dull later and not cut their heads off in a clean chop. 20,000 people, including children, die every day due to a lack of food, even though we have the food. The velociraptor noises in the Jurassic Park World franchise are actually the sounds of tortoises mating. Climbers of Mount Everest use dead people as trail markers. When whales grow too old to live anymore, they lose the energy to stay afloat and slowly sink to the bottom of the sea. So unless a whale beached itself before dying, the majority of all whales drown at the moment of death. Let that sink in. 1 out of every 200 people on Earth are related to Genghis Khan. Dogs like squeaky toys because it sounds like prey that's frightened or injured. In the 1800s, maids used to jerk off teenage boys in order for them to sleep better. When you die, your blood congeals inside your body, so your corpse is pretty much filled with blood jello. During the Cold War, the president had absolute authority to launch nuclear weapons. There were no official safeguards in place to prevent a mentally imbalanced or berserk president from ordering a nuclear strike. Indeed, The only way to stop such a thing from happening would be through a mutiny, and it would have required a significant number of people to participate in order to succeed. The amount of nuclear weapons aimed at the USSR was vast. Some targets were set to be hit by dozens or even hundreds of warheads, and they would have come from a dizzying array of sources via land, sea, and air. Another Krakatoa-like event will bring a 5-year winter across the globe. The fact that Albert Fish ever existed. Look him up at your own risk. Unless you have a child, you are the last of a lineage that goes back to a single-celled organism floating in a soup. Multiple celebrities and politicians have visited Jeffrey Epstein's pedo island multiple times, but we aren't gonna hear about it and they won't get in trouble. And now the Ghislaine Maxwell trial is being swept under the rug. The egg industry shreds male chicks alive as they are of no use to them. This is the age of stars. There will come a time when no new stars form and all stars will die. There will be no light. None. Just darkness and cold. Comforting somehow. Finger holes in bowling balls have been found to contain traces of human feces. It's not the shoes we are all worried about. After all, a few people control access to launching enough nuclear missiles to destroy the whole world. It's just up to them to become. Maybe not disturbing, but it leads to so many disturbing revelations when examined and considered. By 2030 there will not be enough precious metals left to mine to build touchscreen technology, and we have no synthetic substitutes.